Hey everyone, what's going on? Quick heads up for all you island cruisers and street racers. Ubisoft just pushed a small but important patch for the Crew Motorfest on PlayStation. The update labeled 1.018/1.18, and if you've been feeling those frame hitches or weird micro pauses after Season 8 landed, this is the one that claims to smooth that out. It's a lightweight hotfix, not a content drop, but it targets exactly the issue a bunch of you were reporting since the Year 3 rollout. The folks at MP First flagged it as an emergency patch focused on stuttering, and they repeat Ubisoft's note that you should fully close and relaunch the client so the download actually kicks in. Don't just bounce to the home screen and back. If you haven't logged in for a few days, your console may simply pull it down on first boot anyway. Let me set the scene so this all makes sense. Season 8 went live on November 5th, bringing a new vibe to Oahu with fresh playlists and chunky list of quality of life changes, handling tweaks, and new tracks on the radio. The official patch notes break out the headline editions pretty clearly, but here's the short version. There are 2 playlists in the season plan. Street Riders available from the start, and a BMW-themed playlist scheduled to roll in later in the season. Alongside that are broad handling adjustments and a pass on music and QOL fixes across the game. If you were wondering whether that playlist calendar you saw floating around was legit, it's in those notes. What tripped people up was that some players started noticing hitching and stutter almost immediately after the season landed. You could be chasing a ghost in a tight street circuit through Honolulu, everything feels fine for a minute, and then you get this little snag right at turn-in. Enough to miss an apex or clip a cone and blow the lap. That's exactly the thing this patch is aimed at on PS4 and PS5. Ubisoft's communications around the hotfix specifically call out those platforms, so if you're console side and felt like something was off after the season changed over, this should be your first stop before you start digging through troubleshooting menus. Again, the key step is to fully quit and relaunch so the system actually updates, because it won't always prompt you inside the session. If you're asking why it popped up so fast after the big seasonal drop, there's some context. Ubisoft ran routine maintenance the same day Season 8 landed, that early morning maintenance window around November 5th, and that's when a lot of backend and stability groundwork tends to ship. But the real-world test is millions of you hammering the roads, and that's where stuff like device-specific stutter shows up. Rather than wait for a giant cumulative patch weeks later, they slip this console hotfix out quickly. It's a small thing in the patcher, but big enough to notice on your next session. I know some of you play on multiple platforms, so let me cover that angle for a second. The messaging on this particular hotfix highlights PlayStation, which is why you've seen both the PS5 and PS4 builds referenced in coverage. That doesn't mean PC and Xbox will never see follow-ups. It just means this fix targeted a complaint pattern occurring on consoles first. For any platform, your best friend is the official News Hub and patch notes page, goes page PS, because that's where the dev team posts both the planned content calendar and the nitty-gritty fixes. Bookmark those pages, and if you hop in after a few days away and things feel a little different, better or worse, that's the spot to check before you start toggling settings. Let's talk about how to make sure you actually benefit from the hotfix. Step 1 is obvious. Confirm your game has updated by fully quitting to the console dashboard, pressing options, and checking for updates if needed. Sony's system can be picky about updates while a game is in a suspended state, so actually close it. If for some reason the stutter remains, power down the console completely, rather than using rest mode, reboot, and give it another quick test run in a zone where you previously felt the hitching. If you still notice the exact same cadence of stutter, I'd cross-check Ubisoft's general troubleshooting suggestions. They've got a living article for connectivity and performance that covers the basics, such as cache clears and connection stability, which can sometimes masquerade as frame time spikes if the net pipeline hiccups mid-event. And if all else fails, report it. That pipeline is how hotfixes like this one get prioritized in the first place. Now, beyond the fix itself, Season 8 is actually pretty interesting on content and systems. Street Riders is the immediate playlist injection, and if you like dense city driving with that neon night vibe, it's very much the flavor. The season also dangles a BMW playlist later on, which should scratch the itch for anyone who wants a curated manufacturer experience. The official content overview calls out a runway of 21 new vehicles over the course of the season, plus ranked grand races making waves for the more competitive crowd. That last bit is cool because it gives everyone who loves bigger, set-piece events more structure to chase beyond the usual festival rotation. Under the hood, there's also that handy looking for crew feature being highlighted by community outlets. And it's one of those deceptively helpful utilities that will probably improve the average session for anyone who plays outside of a fixed friend group. The idea is straightforward. You signal what you're into at the moment. Maybe you want photo ops along the coast, maybe you're hunting certain events, and it auto-forms a crew with matching interests. Less time spamming menus, more time actually running routes. Couple that with improved handling passes mentioned in the official notes, and the season starts to feel like a cleaner, more social build. If you're curious whether the hotfix changes handling or car behavior, the answer is no, at least not intentionally. The hotfix is about frame consistency and stability on PlayStation. But there's a subtle effect worth mentioning. When stutter clears up, your perception of traction and rotation often improves because your controller inputs line up better with what the screen is showing. That's especially noticeable in tight technical sections where precision matters, like threading through traffic on the H1 at dusk. So if your favorite build suddenly feels more planted or your breaking points feel easier to hit, it might just be that your frame time graph is flatter, not that your car stat sheet changed. Keep that in mind before you go and retune a setup that actually works. Give it a couple of events post-update and see if the consistency holds. Let's say you're hopping back in after the patch and you want a quick vibe check. I'd suggest a controlled test. Pick a route you know by heart, maybe a street race event in Honolulu where you've got a mental map of every bump and camber, and run it twice back to back. If you've got a wheel, use the same force feedback profile you were on last week. If you're on a pad, don't touch sensitivity yet. Pay attention to on-throttle transitions out of second gear corners and to camera motion when you're blasting down a busy strip at high speed. If the micro stutter is gone, both those scenarios should feel smoother because the game's delivering a steadier cadence of frames. If it's still hiccups, try a clean reboot and run one more event before you escalate to deeper troubleshooting or start flipping graphics toggles. Speaking of toggles, there's a temptation to flip performance and visual settings the second something feels off, but in cases like this, you want to isolate variables. Apply the patch, confirm the change, and only then start personal tweaks if you want. On consoles, that basically means stick with the higher frame rate mode if you value smoothness, which for racing, most of us do. And be mindful of background downloads or streaming on your network that can introduce their own little hitches. Ubisoft support pages are consistently updated with general advice that covers network stability alongside system-level cleanup steps. And while they're not glamorous, those steps help more than you'd think. For players who felt the season vibe but were held back by those annoying pauses, this is your green light to jump back in. The seasonal structure itself is set up to reward consistency over a few weeks instead of demanding a no-life grind on day one. The content roadmap on the News Hub spells out what's here now and what's staggered a bit later. And the nice part about that cadence is you can plan your garage work accordingly. Maybe you use the first week to polish a couple of street builds, then pivot into the manufacturer-focused stuff when that drops, and finish with some ranked action when you've shaken the rust off. Keeping an eye on the official newsfeed will keep surprises to a minimum and help you time your sessions around any future maintenance windows. One thing I love about this series is how the island becomes a character. Every time there's a big seasonal move, even if you don't change your main discipline, the feel of the place shifts a little. The radio list gets a refresh, the festival energy changes, and the social layer perks up as everyone swarms the new stuff.